What's up, everybody? It's Trifecta J here, and today we have the Season 2 off-season recap. So I streamed the off-season this past Sunday. If you want to watch the full thing, I'll have that in the description. It's about an hour and a half, a lot of more detailed information in that. But we did go 2-10 in Season 2, finishing the year with a win against North Dakota. One of the big concerns entering the offseason, though, was the job security of head coach Bob Nielsen. He's gone 3-21 so far through 2 years, so it was a concern on whether he would keep his job. He was hovering right between the line of keeping it or losing it. So now we will go ahead and advance into the offseason. It was a moment of suspense here, and we'll see what happened in just a second. But only winning 3 games through 2 seasons wasn't really unexpected for this team, but the AD of South Dakota was looking for more. As we can see in just a second, Coach Bob Nielsen was fired. So the series will continue. We'll meet the new head coach in just a minute. But we can see he went 3-21, 0-2 against South Dakota State, and 0-2 against the top 25. It's a tough transition making the jump from FCS to FBS, especially when you're not one of the premier programs in FCS. So this wasn't, like I said, unexpected for these early struggles, and it did cost the veteran Bob Nielsen his job. So we can see Bob Nielsen's gonna stay in college football. He actually got a pretty good job. He'll be the DC of West Virginia. And we can see a couple other coaching changes before we see our coach. Tony Elliott is making his return to Clemson. He was the head coach of North Dakota. He was fired from that position, replaced by Kevin Johns, and makes the immediate return to Clemson and joins Dabo Swinney once again. So North Dakota's going to have their 3rd coaching staff in 3 years, which is definitely very interesting to see. We'll see how they progress. One other couple of notable things is Mike Gundy and Gary Patterson both were fired in the Big 12. I believe Gary Patterson's one of the longest tenured coaches, and he's been replaced by Philip Montgomery from Tulsa. The new head coach, though, for South Dakota is Christian Vaughn. He's only 31. He played for South Dakota, and he's been a quarterback coach across a number of different schools in the FBS level, and they called him, and he's returning home and will be the new head coach. We should expect a change in the offense and defense, as I expect to see more of a smash mouth spread offense and then the 3-3-5 on defense. Then we got a new defensive coordinator, as Zach Spavital was let go, so they went out and hired Troy's defensive coordinator. He's spent time at Oklahoma and across that area, so he's pretty familiar with the Midwest, and maybe he can give us a recruiting boost in states like Oklahoma. We'll have to see, though. Then a star-studded hire at offensive coordinator, the former 3rd-round quarterback pick Keyshawn Lindley. He played for the Chargers, was very good for them, but his career was cut short to injuries. He was from Indiana State, and he is got his first coaching job, and it's going to be an offensive coordinator position for the Coyotes. We'll see how he calls plays for them. Now we get into the players leaving, as we had a decent number of seniors on this team. Leon Kern, Richie Campbell. We can see actually now the position by position. Trenton Klemper, the 2nd, 3rd. One of our running backs who played a lot is graduating. He was a star on senior day, or the last game of the season. 3 receivers are graduating. We lose 3 starters on the offensive line, and then 4 contributors at skill positions. Then on the defense side of the ball, we lose a couple of reserve defensive linemen, and JT Israel and Leon Kern. Terrell Rice, a reserve linebacker. Rakeem Hood is a pretty big loss. He was one of our most consistent defensive players through the first 2 seasons. He had 18 tackles for loss in his 2 seasons with the Coyotes. Jay Schmidt, Jax Montgomery, and Jeremiah Glover, along with Brer Derby and Bryson Williams, are all graduating. So I have major concerns about our secondary, and then we also lose Kenny Matson at punter. North Dakota State had a ton of seniors graduating, and their position is not helped, as former 4-star athlete Adam Sanders is transferring away, but North Dakota State loses Pearson Hayes, their 2 running backs, 5 wide receivers, a number of starters on the offensive line. Then they have a number of defensive linemen graduating once again, 3 contributors, as they had 4 last year. Levi Jordan, a starter at left outside linebacker, 3 corners, and then Cam Hunter is going in the 6th round at safety. So a ton of turnover for the Bison. Now we get into the offseason recruiting. We had most of our recruits already committed. We held one spot open to see if we could get a transfer. That did not happen. So we can see some of the players. We had Jalen Tate, then Ben James, Justice O'Connor, Michael Long, Tevin Robinson, who's an interesting junior college player, Terrence Mitchell, a corner with a lot of speed, and he'll be a great player for us. Deion Perkins, a very large linebacker who also has some decent athleticism. Jamie Landry, a talented guard who will probably start as a true freshman who's a pass blocking specialist. Then we have Deion Kendrick, who's a decent athlete and most likely will be our number 2 corner in season 3. Trey Tucker is the punter we were able to find. Keel Foster, a reserve safety who should be able to develop. And then some more developmental players in Terrence Bell, Trey Bryant, Latrell Hill. Trey Bryant has some decent speed. Then we have Xavier Thomas and Shedrick Simpson. Both decently talented defensive ends, but both will need some development, and they'll be able to do that with the depth we currently have, or at least the starters we currently have at defensive end. Now into the actual players that we will be targeting. So like I said, we had 17 players graduating, currently 16 players committed. So there were only a couple players I was really interested in targeting, and it's interesting to see we have 21 players graduating in season 3. But it was deciding between Josh Gilmore, Sonny Hubbard, and then DJ Davis, a junior college wide receiver. Gilmore and Hubbard were the main targets in my mind, as Hubbard was a pretty good run blocker. The reason I went away from DJ Davis is he would enter as a junior. We have a ton of depth at wide receiver, and I don't see him really making an impact, and I'd prefer to get an offensive lineman who has time to develop. That's a position that's really at a premium for us, as it's hard for us to necessarily recruit defensive linemen, and they continue to graduate, and it's harder to find offensive linemen than it is to find wide receivers, in my opinion. Sonny Hubbard does end up with the scholarship offer. He's a very good run blocker, but has a ways to go in terms of development. All the points are going into Hubbard, as he was the only player that we had a spot left open. And as we go into signing day, we did get a couple of walk-ons and some players added by the computer. That's something I changed right after this. But DJ Davis ends up at Illinois. A number of other players, LaMarcus Farmer, who is from South Dakota, he ends up at Ohio State. Greg Williams, Ronnie Cole goes to Miami, and then a few others. So you can see the real area that we were targeting is the border states of South Dakota. We got Jalen Tate out of California, the one real player who breaks that trend. And then out of Pennsylvania, we had a walk-on who will not be making the roster. So we had the 124th recruiting class. I believe in year 1 it was 126th. So a slight improvement, but I feel like we got a number of very talented players. North Dakota had the number 49th recruiting class with a ton of 3 stars, 18 of those. And then as we move up the board, then we see North Dakota State at number 26. They signed 3 4 stars, 12 3 stars. So it looks like they signed a number of players with 24 total commits and a decent amount of talent as well. So they'll need to reload after all their seniors graduating, and it looks like they may be able to do that. Then the 21st recruiting class is South Dakota State. They get 5 4 stars, so that'll be huge for them. They got a 4-star quarterback to go along with Aaron Massey, who was a high 3-star last year. Now we get into position changes. The first few are really just reorganizing the offensive line, as Noah Butler will be moved to right tackle, Bo Weaver will be moved to left tackle, and then Noah Johnston, who's a much better run blocker, will be moved to right guard. On the defensive side of the ball now, we have a few changes there. As Tevin Robinson, I wasn't quite sure on what his role would be, but I decided on him being a right end who can also drop into coverage on some of the zone blitz schemes. Then in the secondary, losing 2 strong safeties, we do move Eric Zakowski to free safety where he gets an overall boost. And then moving Ross Bukowski and Trevon Simmons to strong safety. So that should play into our 3-3-5, and they'll probably be the 2 starters for us. But we will move forward now to the training results and the development of our players. One thing to note real quick is Bo Weaver was a little disappointing with only a +3, but Deontay Knox gets a +5. So we have a number of players now in the 70s, which is great to see. Nice progression from this team so far. Now at quarterback, we see J.R. Miller gets a +4. Ezekiel Wood, the backup, gets a +5. Miller gets a little bit faster and most likely will keep his starting job unless something crazy happens. He has a stronger arm and only 2 points less in accuracy, and I would take a stronger arm and a better athlete all day. Then at running back, we see a +5 for Dontavius Knight, who redshirted last year, +4 for both Pierce Libby and Jalen Page. Rakeem Boyd, another player who redshirted, gets a +5. All of them get faster. All of them get better at breaking tackle. A +5 for Rakeem Boyd in break tackle, which is great to see. At wide receiver, we see a +5 for Deontay Knox. Only a +3 for Cooper Price, which was definitely disappointing. And then only a +3 for Deion Gilbert, which was also disappointing. But Price is now up to 89 speed, which is great. At tight end, we get a +5 from everyone except for Tate Wagner. Cordell Hicks gets faster, better hands, and also gets better at blocking. That's the one major concern with him and the reason that Tate Wagner still sees a decent amount of playing time. Only a +3 amongst our left tackles. At center, we get a +5 and +6, which is great to see, especially with Devin Martin graduating. And then you can see Jack Sternberg should be the starter there at only 5'7". Noah Johnston gets a +6, which is huge, as he is very good at run blocking, but sees a nice boost to his pass blocking, which should be very helpful to us. And then at right tackle, Noah Butler gets a +4. He's not a superb athlete, but is a very good run blocker, and we do have questions about his pass blocking though. At left end, Shadot Hansen only gets a +3. The majority of our defensive linemen only get a +3, which is very disappointing to see. Both Martels and Zacharias Tedeschi get a +4. Sylvia gets a +4 as well, gets faster, better tackling, better block shedding, gets a little bit better in coverage, but it's still a major liability. LaDorian McCray, he is a undersized middle linebacker who is pretty punishing. He's strong, not quite as good as an athlete as I would necessarily like, but is not a bad one compared to the other linebackers on our roster. Jackson Harvey gets faster, better at tackling, better at block shedding, rushing the passer. Along with coverage, I'm expecting a big true sophomore season out of him after a great true freshman season. At corner, we get a +5 from Sean Saldana, only a +3 from Xavier Warner. The secondary is where I have my biggest concerns with this team, as Warner and Deion Kendrick I feel pretty comfortable with, but outside of that, there are definitely questions. As you can see, a decent boost and a balanced corner is what Xavier Warner is. But outside of Warner and Kendrick, there are major concerns at cornerback. Then at free safety, we have Eric Sikowski, who was converted over from corner. I feel like he should be a good player for us. He's never started though or played as he redshirted last year, so there are still concerns with him and how well he'll adjust to the FBS level. He has decent pursuit, good man coverage, not super great in zone, but it's better than a lot of the safeties we've had so far. And then at strong safety, Ross Bukowski, who's played a lot. Trevon Simmons has played a decent amount, and so they round out our secondary. We get into cutting players, and the only players we had to cut were walk-ons who were added to our team, as there were 2 at linebacker, Derek Hines and Damian Swain, and then at defensive tackle, Shannon Davidson, who was also a walk-on, which he was committed, and we did not have room for him, so he is cut, even though he and Ricky Hill are both talented players. We just did not have room for them with the rules I have set up to try and keep the dynasty just a little more challenging and not abuse the system quite as much. But some other big news, we saw our coaching change, and the other big news of this offseason is South Dakota is making a jump to a conference. They'll be joining the Mountain West and the Mountain Division, so every year they'll be playing Air Force, Boise State, Colorado State, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, and Wyoming. And it'll be interesting to see, as they will probably be the least talented team in the Mountain West already, even though they have improved. So it should be still a difficult climb, as there is a number of talented teams in the Mountain West. The West is no slouch as well, but I feel like the Mountain Division is probably the strength of the Mountain West. Next, we move into the preseason portion as we look at the red shirts. First up is quarterback Jalen Tate. I see him as the quarterback of the future, but he needs time to sit to develop his accuracy. Next, we have wide receiver Trey Bryant, who's just way down on the depth chart. A lot of these guys who are redshirting are just strictly developmental players. Jamie Landry does not. He is one of the few who is not being redshirted. Sonny Hubbard and Ben James both get redshirted. to give them extra time to develop. Xavier Thomas and Shedrick Simpson were tough calls, but we ended up redshirting both of them, as I would prefer to have an extra year of eligibility instead of playing them as true freshmen when they'll be backups. Both of the defensive tackles redshirt, and one interesting one is Deion Perkins. He's one of the more talented players we got in this class, but I feel like I would prefer to have him more time, and he needs more time to develop as well. And then Terrence Mitchell was one guy I considered playing, but in a similar position as Deion Perkins, I'd rather have that extra year of eligibility and allow him to develop more. So we will open season 3 against Buffalo, play at Minnesota, at West Virginia, in the season at home against North Dakota. We play at South Dakota State and at home against North Dakota State. So we repeat that trend once again. It will get back to normal though in season 4 and beyond. A look at the depth chart, as at running back I see a variety of players who could play. Wide receiver stays pretty much the same, it's the exact same order. Deion Gilbert is the 5th receiver now though. Tate Wagner will continue to see time. And then our offensive line is Bo Weaver, Jamie Landry, Jack Sternberg, Noah Johnston, and then Noah Butler. At defensive tackle, we see Pedro Martell's returns. LaDorian McCray is getting the start at middle linebacker. And then at corner, Sean Saldana, when we play in a nickel look with 3 corners, he will be that nickel corner. And Ross Bukowski and Trevon Simmons are the starters at strong safety. And then the final thing is Dontavius Knight and Rakeem Boyd. Both will be returning kicks, and then Knight is our punt returner. So now we get into the practice portion where we get to just see how this team looks. And I'm really just going to go position by position and sort of break them down and my expectations for them for season 3. So at quarterback, Jaron Miller returns once again in his 3rd season as a starting quarterback. I expect to see continued improvement. I thought outside of the increase in interceptions last year, he definitely played better. His yards per attempt took a big jump, and I expect him to play very well. Hopefully, he can do a better job of taking care of the football. Then at running back, we still have Jalen Page and Pierce Libby. Dontavius Knight should see an increased role as sort of a hybrid running back and wide receiver, just getting the ball into his hands. He's a very elusive player and a good playmaker. I expect the carry split to probably be about 40-40-20 in terms of Libby and Page getting around 40% of the carries each, and then 20% going to Dontavius Knight in just various different ways to get him the balls on jet sweeps, options, that type of stuff. Then at receiver, we return our top 3 in Cooper Price, Deontay Knox, and Nate Went. They should see increased improvement from them, which will be great to see. Cordell Hicks at tight end / wide receiver will continue to play in the slot. And then Deion Gilbert should play a little more. Hopefully he will see numbers closer to his season 1 than he had in season 2. Tate Wagner will still play at tight end as well, as he is an excellent blocker and just adds that element, which is something that Cordell Hicks can't really do that well. On the offensive line, we do lose 3 starters, but I feel confident in Bo Weaver moving to left tackle. Noah Butler and Noah Johnston are both very good run blockers. Jamie Landry, I have slight concerns about his ability to run block, but is a very solid pass blocker, and just playing as a true freshman is always tough. And then probably the biggest concern is Jack Sternberg starting once again. He's only 5'7" at center, which is tough to deal with sometimes. On the defensive line, Shado Hansen is back along with Pedro Martels. And then at right end, Tevin Robinson, the junior college transfer, will be starting there. At the linebacker position, Sylvia Widener and Jackson Harvey are both back, so that will be great to see. And LaDorian McCray will be starting at middle linebacker. He's undersized, but he's a decent athlete. He can hit hard and play well against the run. I just have major concerns about his ability in coverage. The secondary is where my biggest concerns on the entire team come in. Xavier Warner returns, so he is a solid spot. Ross Bukowski returns as well. But outside of that, you have a true freshman starting in Deion Kendrick. The nickel corner, Sean Saldana, who's very slow and not really that great. Then you have Eric Zakowski, who I was high on coming out of high school, but he'll be a redshirt freshman who's never started before, so it'll be interesting to see how he's able to play. And then Trevon Simmons seeing an increased role, basically as a starter in the 3-3-5. So we'll only have 3 down linemen. 3 linebackers than 5 people in the secondary playing at all times. It really allows us, with our lack of depth at defensive tackle, to though we will be opening the season against Buffalo. They have Jarrett Patterson and then another Patterson, who are brothers, at running back and outside linebacker. Both of them are very talented. They will have a new starting quarterback in Daquan Roberson, who is coming over from Penn State. But I hope you did enjoy today's video. The offseason was a ton of fun. It's always fun to interact with y'all, and I can't wait to get into season 3, as it should be a ton of fun. I expect a lot of improvement from this team. I'm not sure how much of that will necessarily show up in the win column, as we still have a relatively tough schedule, and we do have one of the least talented rosters in the FBS level, but there has been a ton of improvement across the roster so far in this series. If you did enjoy today's video though, please leave a like down below. Leave a comment on what your expectations are for the record for this team, and then which players are you most excited to see, either players who are new, maybe incoming recruits, people who are redshirting, people taking on an increased role, or people who you just expect to have a breakout season for us. But I hope you, like I said, I hope you did enjoy today's video. I will see you for week 1 in the upcoming days, most likely. I hope you have a great rest of your day.